Gender equality is a basic human right. Still, the Nordic bioeconomy sector is not a gender equal sector yet. The sooner we realize this, the sooner we can do something about it.
That makes as much sense as saying that people with size 42 shoes aren't fit for the digitalized bioeconomy. It's not the body that decides where you fit.
Gender equality stimulates to a higher degree of innovation and growth, something that benefits us all. This is important for the development of a sustainable bioeconomy.
Good morning and a warm welcome to all of you. It's really nice to see you in this meeting this Friday morning, which is sunny, at least in the southern parts of Sweden. This is our final meeting in what we think the very important project Bioequality, where we're working with a methods handbook in order to provide a little piece of the puzzle in terms of improving gender balance in the Nordic bioeconomy. My name is Maria Thurberg, and I've been coordinating this project, and I have the privilege of guiding you through this session today. And I think it's really nice to see all of you here in the meeting. And we have, I think, a very exciting agenda ahead of us. But first of all, some of the sort of key points that we're working on in this project and have been working on for the last year and a half. So we are here trying to address two core challenges or main questions. The first one being trying to understand how the digital transformation is affecting gender equality among the young people in the Nordic bioeconomy. And then in addition to that, trying to understand then how we can use the digital development in order to change the current status. So these are the two main questions that we have been focusing upon. And this project, after the hard work for the last year and a half, has resulted in a conversation around these questions, but also a very tangible methods handbook that we will later hear more about. And we have been working in these 4 different work packages. So just very briefly to provide you some information on this. We started off the project with doing an investigation into what does the science actually say at the moment. What do we know about this intersection between the 3 areas of gender, bioeconomy, and digitalization? So that's what we started off, and the mapping that took part in autumn 2020. And then we entered into a more interactive part of this project in the work package 2 and 3, where we were in dialogue with a range of stakeholders within the bioeconomy talking about these questions. And then during the last autumn, 2021, we then tried to summarize all these learnings and packaging them into a method handbook. And if you're interested about these different parts, in addition to what we're going to present here today, there's also a web page at the SNS homepage where you can read up on all these different parts. And together with us in this project, we'd have a range of collaboration partners. And we're truly happy about this very sort of Nordic spread of interest in these questions. So we have, of course, and I will soon leave the word to Jonas Rönnberg from Nordic Forest Research, we also had a range of other project collaboration partners. As you can see here, we've had a Nordic Agri Research with us, Skogakuner from Iceland, Jord- och skogsbruksministeriet from Finland, University of Eastern Finland, Lantbruks- och matdepartementet från Norway, Lantbrukarnas riksförbund, or LRF. We have the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, Norges forskningsråd, Ålands hushållningssällskap, and also University of Copenhagen. So it's been really nice to have all of these different voices with us into the project. And now I would like to give the word to Jonas Rönnberg, who's heading Nordic Forest Research, to say a few words as the project owner of the Bioequality project. Most welcome, Jonas.
Thank you very much. And real pleasure to see so many here today. And I would say that this Bioequality project has been some really interesting and very exciting journey for both SNS and NKJ, where we are striving indeed for societal impact and long-term change. We are collaborative units, SNS within the forestry side and NKJ within the food and agriculture research under the Nordic Council of Ministers hosted by SLU. We work with different ways of engaging scientists and researchers around the Nordic countries and also extending beyond that. And besides doing that, we also have a number of those strategic projects like this one, where we are working directly with the project at the Secretariat. And I would say that we have something interesting going on, not only with this, but there are spin-offs from this. And one of the spin-offs have been new gender guidelines for all our projects that we're financing. And they're tailored for SNS as it is, but they are also useful for NKJ. And I've heard that there is interest elsewhere also for these guidelines as well. I also say that we are quite a few amateurs when it comes to gender issues, but it's better than nothing. And we have, of course, also some professionals in the subject. And this engagement is needed, but it's also very good that we have, as a spin-off, one published scientific paper that gives some extra credibility to us amateurs. Oops. I don't know if everyone heard that, but there was some disturbance on the line here. But okay. I would like to see more men engaged, though, and I would like to see sometimes also a greater interest from leaders. And therefore, I would say it's extra appreciated the support that we have felt from and got from the highest level at the Nordic Council of Ministers, manifested in the presence that we have today of the Secretary General. And Paula will get back later here on the agenda. It's really nice. And I also said this before in many different situations, that the questions that we're dealing with today are a matter of survival for our sectors. And I think actually it is, for the competitiveness and happiness. And with those words, I would like again to also say welcome to all of you to not the end, but the start of what's coming after this Bioequality project.
Thank you very much for that, Jonas, and apologies for the disturbance. I know our technicians are trying to solve that. Let me see. I would like to present the agenda for today. And as Jonas mentioned, we have some distinguished guests in the meeting, which we're very happy about. We will start off with this first topic of sort of why caring? Why is this an important topic? And we are including 4 different voices here. And so I'm very excited to have sort of a range of different professionals and people with us in this meeting, from of course, the Secretary General from the Nordic Council of Ministers, Paula Lehtomäki, but we also have voices from university and from the private sector. After that, we will enter into a short break, so everyone get a chance to get a glass of water or whatever it's needed. And we will then come back and we will get some presentations from the work that has been done within this project. So both from the study that been made, so on the topic of what do we actually know, and then also on the topic of what have we done. So getting a deep dive into this methods handbook that we prepared. And then at the end of the meeting, we will also talk a bit about what's next. There are a range of interesting projects in the pipeline here. I think we are actually experiencing what I've heard of several times, but never actually experienced before, but that some people are trying to disturb our meeting willingly. So I hope that our studio can help us in order to make sure that they are not making too much of a disturbance.
Rapist, rapist, rapist.
We will see how this plays out. We can, of course, exclude people from the meeting and we can mute them. So I will ask everyone that's coordinating this to help me ensure that's being taken care of. The worst case scenario is that we have to close the meeting and that we will send out a new link. But let's give it a few minutes to see if we can solve this without having to do that. It is an issue with Zoom that it can happen that people get hold of the link and they deliberately try to crash the meeting. But let's see if we can make it work. At the end of the meeting, we're also providing the possibility for a mingle session. So we will guide you into this other forum, which is called We Wonder, to allow for some discussions. So at the end, I will provide you information on how to do that. A few technical details, a part of them being aware that perhaps we need to take action of this disturbance that we see in the meeting. I would like to encourage anyone to share comments and reflections in the chat function. And please to join the discussion forum at the very end of the meeting. And I also suggest, as everyone already have done, to mute your microphones in order to avoid disturbances. And on that note, I would like to invite our 4 speakers. And as I mentioned, we have Paula Lehtomäki, the Secretary General of the Nordic Council of Ministers, being the first speaker. And after that, I will turn to Matilda Bertils, who has a master's degree in forest science and now working at Skogsstyrelsen. And then we also have Teppo Hyala, who's been part of this project from the beginning, who is a professor of forest bioeconomy and foresight at the University of Eastern Finland. And then our final speaker here is also our keynote for today, and that's Pernilla Alexandersson, who's working at Add Gender, who will give us a bit more of a deep dive into this topic. Jonas mentioned that some people in the project are actually professionals within the gender area, and Pernilla is definitely one of those. But first of all, a very warm welcome to Paula Lehtomäki. We are very happy to have you with us, and the floor is yours, Paula.
Thank you. Dear Nordic friends, thank you for inviting me to this event. And congratulations to all who have been working for this project. It is fantastic that we now have the first results and can continue our work on these important areas, bioeconomy and gender equality, with new tools. It goes without saying how important parts the forestry and agricultural sectors are in the Nordic bioeconomy. And it also goes without saying how that bioeconomy is an integral part of green transition, a thorough societal and economic transformation we need to do in order to become more sustainable. The most sustainable and integrated region of the world. That is what Nordic region should be in 2030, according to the vision for Nordic cooperation. Green transition not only needs to be green, it needs to be just as well. Just in the sense that everybody feels included, everybody is on board. And just in the sense that all can seize the possibilities that arise from green transition. And here we have a challenge, as we all know, as the forestry and agricultural sectors are two of Nordic region's most gender segregated sectors. In addition, digitalization risks reinforcing the current structures. Digitalization and automation of heavy work have great potential to benefit the gender equality in these sectors. This has, however, not happened, not yet. Therefore, we need to work together to turn digitalization from being a risk to being an opportunity to benefit gender equality in bioeconomy. The Nordic countries have been cooperating for gender equality for over 40 years. This cooperation has yielded good results, and the Nordic countries can be proud of being some of the most equal countries in the world. But some challenges remain. Gender equality is an important basic value in itself, but it also has a great economic value. In order to create competitive and inclusive green transition, everyone's competences are essential, no matter their gender. Economically, it should be clear that we cannot afford to miss out on half the potential we have. It is there of utmost importance when sectors like forestry and agriculture take on the challenge and analyze and discuss gender issues. We need to strengthen just and equal participation in all stages of knowledge chain, from education to strategic decision making. With these thoughts and words, I wish you all a productive seminar and all the success in building an ever more sustainable Nordic region. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paula. It's really encouraging to hear the Nordic engagement in these questions. And I hear you saying that the green transition needs to be just, and that really paves the way, I think, for these kind of projects and engagements. And also I hear you saying that, well, the digital transformation and the digitalization of these sectors, we need to see them as an opportunity or ensure that they are an opportunity rather than a risk. So thank you so much for providing the possibility to work on these very important topics. And thank you for those welcoming words. Thank you, Paula. I would now like to introduce Matilda Bertils and to give you the floor, Matilda. We are also interested to hear why do you think this topic is interesting and why do you choose to engage in this project? So most welcome to Matilda.
Hey, can everybody hear me now?
We can hear you.
Yeah, great. Well, I was asked to talk about how equality is good to adapt in school and digitalization. Why it's important for the school environment? And I would say that when I first started studying, I didn't consider myself being a feminist. But when I met the people and realized that the forest sector is a really male dominant or man dominant sector where men are CEOs, men are high bosses in companies, and also we only met men educating us. And this created norms that my classmates realized that they were a part of, or some didn't realize, but we started to question this. Why is it like this, and what can we do to change it? And I was in the forest, or in the student union when the Me Too movement campaign started, and that's when I realized that this is important, and it's always been important for me, but this is important to be a part of because it's changing now. So that's when I started to be more engaged in the students' role in the university, and later on this led to my engagement in the NIX network for women and non-binary in the Swedish forest sector. And I think it's important because we are actually making changes, and the first change is to create information and representation in the forest sector. Why are women important? What can we do to change the forest sector? And one thing that is important in this aspect is digitalization, because forest sector is not a physical demanding job anymore. My work at Skogsstyrelsen, for example, I basically work from the computer, and I look at maps and see how the forest changes throughout the computer. So both for women and people with disability, for example, digitalization is an important factor because we don't need to be out in the forest to work anymore. And yeah, that is basically why I think it's important to increase digitalization awareness and equality in the education system and also out in the forest sector.
Well, thank you very much, Matilda, for sharing your view and sort of your perspective on this. As a former student and now as an employee within the digitalized bioeconomy, I think it's interesting to hear sort of or listening to your reasons to why you're engaging in this topic. And I also hear you saying that, well, what can we do to create change? And I definitely think that this kind of forum and the work we've been doing in the project where you participated is one such way. So thank you so much, Matilda, for joining us and for sharing your thoughts. I would now like to welcome our next speaker, and we will move to Finland. And I would like to say hi to Teppo. And good morning, Teppo. You have been part of this project since the very beginning, representing one of the collaboration partners. Please, would you share some of your thoughts? Why do you think this is important, and why are you engaged in this?
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. This project has been very exciting for me, and I'm looking this from the perspective of a professor whose field includes looking at the futures of sustainable forest-based bioeconomy, and also from the viewpoint of someone who at the university is leading a research discipline and also an educational field. And my first viewpoint that I want to highlight is that I consider this as a matter of just like Paula Lehtomäki said a few minutes ago. So from an individual students or young employees or job applicants point of view, it is simply the right thing to do as much as we can with our best efforts to create such an atmosphere, such an educational institute that is welcoming, that is just and equal, and bringing this kind of a spirit that everybody feels welcome, and that there are no such structures and norms and behaviors that are distorting this equality. The second aspect I want to highlight here is the aspect of the sector, of the companies and other players in the labor market, employers, and it is simply so that the research quite strongly shows evidence that diversity in workplaces enables better results and better success, and it is evidently the case with the bioeconomy sector, or the different subsectors of the bioeconomy, that our employers need such a kind of recruitment base that has come through such an education that has been equal and just, and has provided these equal opportunities, so that they have the best available workforce for them to recruit. And third point that I want to emphasize here is our university point of view, or the educational sector's point of view, that of course, when we have such a gender equal and in many aspects equal educational institute, we could perhaps invite and attract higher quality of applicants, which contributes further to the better learning results and to the better research quality, and that is of course a great benefit for the whole Nordic bioeconomy sector. So there are different levels of benefits, and I really think that this project has provided and will continue to provide, for me and my colleagues at least, the terminology and the different practical tools to keep the equality aspects live and present in our practices whenever we are dealing with our marketing or our orientation studies or our supervision and other things. So I really think that I have learned to continuously reassess my own behavior, because there might be some cultural things that I haven't recognized that are actually strengthening these gendered practices. But when I know that how can I improve my own behavior and my own communication and support others to do that as well, it will contribute to the more equal Nordic bioeconomy. With these words, I'm really appreciating the great effort that the project has done, and wishing the best success for the continuation and for the impact generation post-project with this these outputs that the project has generated. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those words, Teppo, and a warm thank you for your engagement throughout the project. I hear you talking about many different things here, equally important, of course, but at the end you also mentioned this both with sort of the awareness and terminology that such a project like this one can sort of provide, but also then the very more tangible or concrete tools that can come out of it. And also thank you for your more personal reflection. And I think that's something that me as well as an individual have sort of learned to reflect a bit more upon my own role in this development. So thank you so much, Teppo, for those words and your engagement. I would now like, to introduce our fourth speaker, and it's Pernilla Alexandersson from a firm called Add Gender. And you've been working with these questions for a long time, Pernilla, and we are really interested to hear more from you and to listen to you. You have a bit more of a time, so you will provide us also with a new take on presentation technique, I think, making sure that we all stay alert in this session. You're most welcome, Pernilla.
Thank you. It feels so great to be in this Nordic meeting, because my mother is actually born in Finland and my father is born in Norway and I'm born in Sweden. So it's like really in the intersection of everything, it feels. So it's really fun to be here. I'm, the pandemic have been like taking us all on to this digitalized journey with meetings. And when the pandemic hit back again and we started to have meetings from home again here in Sweden anyhow, I just felt I got really tired on looking at PowerPoint presentations. And I'm fond of the method of mind mapping. So I'm thinking I'm going to inspire you today, both on the issue of gender, but also on the issue of mind mapping. So I often do my lectures in mind maps like this. So I'm going to have an inspirational presentation for you all today. And what it's going to be a topic about is about how can we like visualize, or how can we see the world in a more both digitalized and gender equal way. So first of all, we'll start up here talking about the digitalizations of everything and how things being more complex today. And then we will go further into why does gender matter in this area? Why is it important for us to have the gender glasses with us when we are working with digitalized processes and methods and in a digitalized world. And then I will give you some highlights from the different industries that me as a CEO and gender equality expert have been working with since 2008. I founded Add Gender in 2008, and I think I was the third company in Sweden that actually was consulting during this question. So I was really early. So I will give you some inspiration from what we have been working with. And then we will talk a little bit about now. What can we see? What kind of gender system do we have when we look in different industries and in our society, and how can we understand it in a better way to just have the gender glasses with us? And then we will talk a little bit about wow. What would be wow in a more gender equal world? And I have some illustrations here that are actually based on a conversation with my 7-year-old son. So I will give you like what he said, but you can see here some things he thought about when I asked him, what would be wow in your school if we both have digitalization and gender equality? So I will give you some inspiration around that. And I always say that when something is complex, just ask a child, they know everything. And then in the very end, we will also go into a little bit about how. Of course, this is everything a how, but it's the now, it's the wow, it's the how, and that is like connected also to the why. And actually, this is something that is called the change makers for argument for change. So in rhetoric agendas, you can see that if you have these 4 arguments, then you are able to make some change. If you have the why, if you can explain the now, if you can visualize the wow and go with the how, then the change is real. So that is why I also want to inspire you with all of these things. So I will talk, and I will get back to the mind map during the talk. But I would like you all to begin with me in this area. And here I have an image of something that I will tell you a story about. So this is a clue. But I will begin in my apartment several years ago. I was sitting with my balcony door open, and it was somewhere early in the year, I remember. It was cold, but getting a bit warmer and lighter. And when I was sitting in my couch, I heard like a sound that I never heard before. It was sounding like this. And it was coming from outside. And I was like amazed and was like, what kind of sound is that? And I went out to my balcony, and I had a balcony that was like just in the area of treetops when I was living in my apartment several years ago. And I was just listening, and I was hearing like everywhere. And I haven't heard that sound any other time in my life before. Can you guess in the chat what sound it was me hearing? Squirrel, good guess. Woodpecks, good guess. That was like my guesses, but sorry, they are wrong. Anyone else? Stepping? No. It was like, or no. I need to tell you, the clue was my drawing. It was the buds bursting. It was the sound of a very, very quick coming spring. I don't know if any of you ever heard it, but I never heard it before and after. It was like a really fast spring, and I was allergic, so it was like a really not a good time for me. I remember this, but it took a while for me to realize that it was the buds bursting, and that was the sound of buds bursting really, really fast. And I could actually see them open, and I will never forget this. And why am I telling you this story? Because it's connected to digitalization. Because I also heard a few weeks ago from an expert in digital transformation that in the nearest 100 years, we will see 20,000 years of digital technological development. If we look back and if we look forward, and is in this speed, comparing to the speed I saw and heard when the spring was bursting only a few hours instead of like 20 days or more. So this is what we are going to see, and we will not recognize it because in our experience, things takes more time to burst. So we will be like a little bit confused, and we need to be really flexible, and maybe it will hurt. Maybe you're allergic to technology and development, then this will be really hard. Maybe you will go into Zoom meeting and try to destroy them because you're like, oh my God, this is going so fast. I can't jump on this train. It's too much to take in, and I never seen it before. I don't know what it is. Is it a squirrel? Is it a horse? Is it gender equality? Is it digitalization? I don't know. So like we have this society where we have the complexity going from simple to complicated to complex. And we also have instability, like the pandemic, the environmental change. So you are here, like it's like a really fast going process that you don't recognize, and everything is like really hard to cope with. And what do you need to do in this kind of fast bursting buds of spring? Well, first of all, this is an optimistic symbol. Like we need to be more optimistic. We need to talk to each other in a more optimistic way, because we are really afraid and we are really flexible right now. And that is not something that we are always glad to be. So some of us will be really sad and some of us will be really happy. But most of us will be both in different contexts or situations. So we need to help each other to be optimistic. And why do gender matter in this? That is a really important question. And that is why my company, I named it Add Gender, because we need to add gender to our optimistic view on the future. Because if we don't add gender to our optimistic view, we won't get a polyphonic image of the future, as many pixels as possible. Because when we are creating the future at this phase, the bursting buds, when we are creating the future, if we don't have gender glasses, we won't be able to create the best possible future for everyone. So that is why gender matters to us. So I write 2029 here just because, you know, Agenda 2030, I like to imagine it the year before because that is just how I think. So, and that, actually, this is my logo for my company Agenda that I had since 2008. So here we have the optimistic view, and we need to add gender. And that is what I bring to the table of digitalization and this new world that we are creating. And what I want to also talk to you about is, as I said, our experience in different industries. And we have worked with forestry, gaming, medtech, transportation, legal industries. I mean, it's been such a lovely ride, but also hard, of course. And for me, working with these questions since 2008, I can say that barely I can take in the speed that it's going in. I can take an example from the legal industries that we have been working to change the unequal gender norms in the legal industries in Sweden with having a prize. Every year, people that work with different legal industries, legal companies in Sweden can compete to win a prize with the most equal gender legal company in Sweden. And first, when we began for a few years ago, people were really like, oh, I don't know if we should do this. Why is it profitable for us? Why is it important? And, you know, we have been pushing. And just the other meeting we had, companies, legal companies in Sweden were saying, we want it to go faster. And even me that are like burning and so engaged in gender equality, I was like, is this the buds bursting? I don't know. I don't know how to be more flexible and work harder, because I'm like working as hard as I can. But I mean, it's lovely, but also I get a little bit afraid and confused and like, how can we do this? But this is what I'm seeing, like in every industry, people are saying, we want the gender equality journey to go faster. So you can't look back and say, well, a few years ago, people were like really negative around these questions. So that will be like the phase we are seeing in the future. That's wrong, because everything is going faster and the buds are bursting faster. So like maybe tomorrow, the person that was negative yesterday will come and say, how can we make this go even faster? Do we have any tools? How can we do this? So that is something that I want to share based on our experience. And in this field of our experience with the different industries, and I mean, this is just some of them, but what I want to say is that we also have a triangle up here. And this is a triangle that is a triangle of how norms, the unwritten rules of gender, for example, are created in different contexts or different situations. And I have this triangle here in Lego. So a norm is formed, so a gender norm, for example, is formed from the top of the triangle and from the bottom of the triangle, but also in the middle. So if we take another example, we can take, for example, transportation sector. In the bottom of the norm triangle, we have ideas around who can, for example, drive a lorry. Is it a woman or is it a man? What kind of age is that person? So that is ideas based on stereotypes and our experience from earlier. And then in the top, we have like rules or the things that comes from our ideas. And in the middle, we have the actual behavior, how we talk or how we do our marketing or how we base our business, our workplaces on different formats, or if we have a booth to change your clothes wherever. So this is how norm shapes. We can shape them with rules or expectations or papers or things we write, and we can change them with our behaviors or our workplaces, what we actually do between people. And we can change norms based on values and thoughts. We can say that's an old thought, that's not working anymore, and then we can change it from both directions. And that is something that is in every situation, small, big, an industry, a workplace, or between people in a family. And then we get into the now, right? When we talk about norms. So this little star here is an illustration of how the gender system is based today in our Nordic countries. And it's two principles that we can see. The first principle is superior, and second principle is discriminating or separating the genders. So I also have some Lego here to illustrate it. So in the top of a stair today in our gender stereotypes or our gender norms in the Nordic country, we have the ideas around what it means to be male. That is like superior to what it means to be female. So it's in the top of the stairs, right? And it's separated. So the idea of what it means to be female is separated from the idea of what it means to be male. And that is something that is common in all the gender norms, undepending of what industry you are working in, because this is how the gender system looks today. And the one thing that is proof of why the gender system looks like this today is that we can see that women, females, they have more flexibility to move up and down the stair. So if a woman, for example, wants to become police officer, that is a high status masculinity trait, it's okay. We encourage them to go upwards because it's as long as they keep separated in maybe clothes or behaviors, so we don't mix them. But for male or men, we don't encourage them to go downwards in the stairs because we want to protect them as a society or as a mother or father or whatever we want to protect. So that is one of the proofs of how the gender system looks like. So it's good to be a man, but it's also bad because you can't often change to something else. But this gender system is something that we can change. We can change the gender system, but we can't keep the stair because the stair is not working. So that is why I just want to go quickly into also the wow. Because what are we going to change the system to? We haven't been there, right? No one. So we don't know. But we need to, in order to fix this and this, we need to have a wow. Or else we can't keep optimistic and just go into the future. So as I said, I asked my 7-year-old son, what if considering this, I said, it's going really fast and we want to make it more gender equal. Considering this, what would be wow the year 2029 in your school, if this will be possible. And he said, well, that would be amazing, mother. He said, it would be like a whole new world if the digitalization and gender equality mixed. He said, everyone could have whatever they want to have clothing, like they could have colors, skirts, pants, whatever. That would be like a really interesting development. And every child could play with every toy they wanted. That would be amazing, because today in his life, these are really depending very much on the ladder or the stairs. And he said, oh, you could have like long hair if you were a guy at my school. No one would say you're a girl or whatever. And you can have whatever hairstyle you want. And he also said, well, with digitalization, we could have like robots with iPads in them, so that people that are scared to go to school could be there and feel that they belong, even though they have functional variations or disabilities. And he also said, oh, maybe the digitalization and the gender equality together could help us not to just sit and look in each book that we have in front of us. Maybe we could collaborate more. Maybe if the computer says that, well, you love to drive cars and you love to read books, the computer can say, why don't you collaborate and solve a problem together, instead of just sitting and learning stuff that we don't need in real life. And I think that this is what gender equality and digitalization can do for us. That if we take this into an industry or grown-up life, you can be whatever you want. You can play with whatever you want at work, and we can have data and computers and a way of working with our system that makes us collaborate depending on what we are good at, not depending on what place we should have in this system that is old and not working anymore. And last of all, I just want to give you some inspiration around how. And here it says, what works? And learn new stuff works. We need to learn new stuff around gender equality and digitalization every day. And system change. We need to change the system, and then we need to have some kind of vision. And cooperation, like we need to say, we have this challenge in gender equality area in our industry, for example, or in our workplace. How can we cooperate to make it better? Do you have any ideas? And also we need to have value shifting conversations. And then I want to remind you of this, that if we shift the values in a gender norm triangle and say this is old ideas, then we have a force that makes the triangle go further into space. And another thing that works is nature. I mean, the thing we know is that spring will arrive, and what works better? It works better for us to put on our gender glasses and look at this complex buds bursting time that we are in. So that is much better than just to go or rush into darkness and not knowing what kind of future we want to create together. Yeah, so that's my story for you today, and I hope that I inspired you. And if you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to write in the chat, and I hope that I can answer them.
Well, thank you so much, Pernilla. And I really encourage, if anyone has any questions, I mean, we do have a couple of minutes, so feel free to raise your hand or write in the chat. I think it was really, I was trying to figure out myself, Pernilla, what was that sound? What could it be? And I definitely did not guess it was the buds bursting, but I think that's really a good metaphor, I guess, for what's happening and the speed of it. A few questions from my side, and again, I welcome anyone else who have questions. But you here in the end mentioned value shifting conversation, and you had your triangle in the Lego. But what does that really mean? What is a value shifting conversation, and how can you give us some advice? How do we actually enter into such a conversation, or what should we think about if we try to do that?
Yeah, it's really interesting because there's a survey that's called World Value Survey. People often have heard of it because it's like the biggest and only survey around like what kind of values we have as humans all over the world in every culture. And actually that survey says that modern values is for example, equality and people being able to self-express or be, as I said, with the toys or whatever I want to work with forestry, for example, then my gender shouldn't stand in the way. So that's like the modern values in the World Value Survey study. And the more traditional values are more of like, well, we will do what we have done before, we listen to authorities and so on. And actually there's a study in the Institute for Future Studies in Sweden that have looked into like how can we value shift so that more people go into the more modern values of this 6 different values that we have over the whole world. And actually the study at the Institute of Future Studies said that if we want to shift the values to more modern, the only thing that can help us is to have conversations, like open conversation around this, because the more modern and also universal values that you don't want to hurt people or you want to love whoever you want to love or be whatever you want to be, those values always triumph over the more traditional values when you talk about it. Because it's like, who can argument against that a child, for example, wouldn't be able to express themselves? Or maybe a child feel that this is not my way of being female or male, or I'm not any of those categories. How can you say to another person that your child can't do this? You can't win such a value shifting conversation. But often we are afraid of taking those conversations. And when we don't take them, we don't give the other person the possibility to follow the value all the way to the base. So that's why we need to have more value shifting conversation, and we need to be more brave and just believe that if we have them, we will go into a more positive and optimistic future together.
Well, thank you. And maybe I'm thinking then that if we do it together, it's easier sometimes to be brave together. So if there's a few of us that enter into these conversations together. Thank you. We have a question or a comment, let's see here in the chat from Jonas, I believe. How do you see upon the political development in many countries and how this will affect the gender development? Do you have any, you're more than welcome to comment on that, Pernilla.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that I go to science and I can see that both women and men, and also people that don't fit into those categories, like in also biological and identity. I mean, we have a lot of science today going into genetics and everything. We see that gender is more than this stare. So it's not just me saying this. So I always go back to like science and say, what can science learn us about gender? And then I look into politics, and then I just connect them and say, well, when science are going really fast and we know more about gender that we ever known, we know more about how we can get gender equality, we know more about values and how we work as a human being, also cognitive. So for me, it's like really, I can see that the political conversations are like going like this around gender equality, like everywhere it's going that way and that way. But I think we just need to believe in science and have also like the conversations political because as I said, when we have these value shifting conversations, the universal values always wins over the more traditional values, because they are more logical, because everyone wants to keep people safe. That is like the very baseline of being humans, that we don't want to hurt each other. And that's just, as I said, not just me saying it, it's the science that we know today about being a human being. So that is like, maybe that's too vague going into the political, but I think that was maybe what you meant, Jonas, that it's going like in different directions, and sometimes it can feel like really unstable. But I believe that we are going in the right direction, and that the instability is just a sign of buds bursting.
Well, thank you. And if I understand you correctly, what you're saying here is that we need to sort of stand on the foundation of science, and what do we actually know from the researcher point of view. And I think that's actually an excellent bridge into the next part of our meeting, where we will look at what does science say on this topic and the intersection of bioeconomy, digitalization, and gender. So thank you so much, Pernilla. It was really interesting to listen to you. And personally, I really enjoy your mind map and getting a break from the PowerPoints.
I can send it out to you if you want to, the participants. So
yeah, please do take a picture and send it to us. I think that would be really nice. And we will remember this, the now, the how, and the wow.
Yeah.
Excellent. And Pernilla, you will still be in the meeting. So if anyone has questions, I would encourage you to post those in the chat, and you can have a dialogue in the chat.
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you very much, everyone.
Excellent. I would now like to invite you all to a break. If we were in the same room, we could all go for a coffee or a cup of water together, but now it will be in different places. But let's take a 10-minute break, and then we kick off the program again, 11:10 sharp. So I'll see you back in 10 minutes. And for those of you who want to stay, you're more than welcome to just hang out and talk in the chat. But see you back in 10 minutes to continue the meeting for today. Bye for now. Okay, it's 11:10 and I welcome you all back. I will also like to say thank you to everyone for your patience during the beginning of the meeting while we struggled with some uninvited guests, but it seems like we have it under control at the moment. And of course, warm thank you to our four previous speakers. I think it was really interesting to hear both from the Nordic Council of Ministers and Paula Lehtomäki, but also we had Matilda, Teppo and Pernilla talking about different perspectives on gender in the digital bioeconomy. And I also saw we got a question from Elias. Nice to have you in the meeting, Elias, in the chat function. And please continue posting your questions there, or indeed join the Wonder Mingle event at the end of our meeting. We are now going to kick off with the second part of our agenda for today. And this is where we will dive into some of the work that has been done within the project. So first off, I would like to welcome my colleague Lovisa Tofgård, who will talk about the first study that we did within the project, where we actually looked into, so what does the science say on this topic? So the floor is yours, Lovisa. You're more than welcome.
Thank you so much, Maria. So as Maria just said, for the first part of the project, we conducted a literature review that later also was worked into an academic paper. So the purpose of the study and why we did this was to investigate what had already been researched on these topics that we were interested in. So we conducted a literature review to find linkages between gender, bioeconomy, and the digitalization. And because there was not much existing literature on gender and the digitalized bioeconomy, the three concepts were instead studied in pairs. So I thought I'd go through some of the results with you here and then also some of the action points. So some of the themes that we found in the existing literature for gender and bioeconomy was that first, the literature explains that forestry historically has been seen as a very masculine field, and it still impacts the view today, and research has shown that practical work within forestry and agriculture still is largely divided along these gender lines. Also, we found that the literature explains why this gender imbalance prevails and has explained that because of the representation in the bioeconomy is largely the masculine, female students may not seek to go into employment or study in those fields due to discrimination, exclusion, or stereotyping, or things like that. And thirdly, we also found that linkages between sustainability and the future of the bioeconomy, and it explained that women's inclusion is needed to ensure an economically competitive but also socially sustainable bioeconomy. For the second intersection of topics that we studied was the digitalization of the bioeconomy. And here we found, first and most importantly, why data analytics and management are so important, and important also for the bioeconomy. And there are vast amounts of data being collected from various sources, and the bioeconomy is getting more and more data-driven. And this data needs to be analyzed, but also that in using these analyzing tools, farmers and foresters often surrender their rights to this data and is no longer in the same control as they may have been earlier. Also, we saw that these topics have some social implications, and we found that these technical solutions that are being developed seem to favor mostly large corporate actors at the expense of independent farmers. Finally, another topic or theme that we saw in this topic was the lack of trust for technologies, and also difficulties in identifying when and where to invest the resources, and when to take your forest or your land to being more digitalized. So the third topic I thought I'd go into before going on to kind of the conclusions and the action points was the gender perspectives of the digitalization. And discovered here was that there is a type of inequality in the labor market, of course, and the education. And digitalization, it does create more opportunities within some of the of these fields. However, gender imbalances in the education, like the current imbalances, it still disencourages future potential female students, as I was kind of saying before, that they may not want to go into those fields if they already see that they are imbalanced. And the second thing that we also saw here was that gender constructs and stereotypes and all these new opportunities in the new digital era are generally considered to be fields largely intended for men. And studies have shown that women themselves, often saw technology, data, and digitalization to be very masculine fields. And last, another theme that we kind of identified within this literature was that digitalization, it does provide, and this is something that we've seen through the entire project and what the project kind of builds on as well, is that it provides both opportunities, but also obstacles in addressing the gender inequality issues, and that the digitalization can favor both men and women, but we may have to work a little bit more actively to get it to favor the women. So after having studied all these topics separately in pairs, we started to look at the intersection of all these three. So there may not have been much literature on all these three together, but what could we say, drawing conclusions, all of these three, kind of the middle area, what you would see here in this picture. So firstly, we saw that the workforce in the bioeconomy, it is changing. It's no longer only farming and forestry knowledge that is valued, but also the competence within data management and technology. And that because of this workforce demand, and that the increasing workforce demand, and that it is changing, and the demand for data scientists and experts within the bioeconomy. And there is a need to meet this increase. And the change in workforce demand could motivate and should motivate the need to include women to a greater extent. So kind of using this momentum that is occurring and these changes in the workforce, it could be used to attract more women and defy the stereotypical bioeconomy worker. But it should also be said that once these standards are once again set, they tend to be a bit more difficult to change. So it really is key to take advantage of this momentum that we currently have, that the workforce is shifting. And secondly, we recognize that most of the workers in technology are men, and there is a need for a wider type of rethinking. So here, the literature, and we suggested that female leadership, mentorship, and networks are needed to attract more women to the sector. But what could, however, be questioned in terms of this is also whether it is right to add even more activities to women's schedules that do not necessarily contribute to their career advancements. So more research or more kind of like thoughts behind this would be needed on this area. And finally, I thought I'd share with you some of the action points that we recommended to work with this further. So the first would be to increase the number of role models and to diversify the masculine image within the digitalized bioeconomy. And also, as I mentioned previously, networks and mentorship programs can be very valuable to facilitate discussions and to empower the women to pursue careers within the digital bioeconomy. And also, further research on the topic is necessary. As we saw, there is no research for kind of that middle part. We started it ourselves, basically. And finally, we need to develop tools and methods to incorporate this topic in the bioeconomy related to university education. And this last action point, this is, most of you already know, something that we did within this project following the literature review. And this is something that Annie will tell us a bit about more soon here. So, and that was all from me.
Well, thank you so much, Lovisa. That gave a quick walkthrough from the work that we did in the autumn 2020 and also a bit in the spring 2021. And if you have any questions about this, please post them in the chat. And you can also look at the links. I can see that both Katarina and Annie has shared links in the chat here to the more sort of popular science version report, but also to the academic paper that was published some time ago. And these action points are then sort of the result of this study that Lovisa talked us through. And at least the three first of these ones are more perhaps directed towards the industry and different players within the bioeconomy, looking at how do we create more role models and then these networks and mentorship programs. And then of course we have the ones more directed to academia. But I guess one of the key takeaways here as well is that, well, it needs to be a joint effort from students, from the people teaching, research side, but also from the employers within the bioeconomy. So thank you so much for that, Lovisa. And as an introduction to Annie's part of this session, I will show you a few more of these video clips that we are so proud of. So as we kicked off this meeting, while we're showing 3 of those, I will now show you a few more. And these are an important part of the work we have been doing, and they are sort of aligned with this idea of creating a conversation and raising awareness of this topic and bringing different voices to the table. So after a few video clips here, I will then welcome Annie Roos to talk us through some of these core points in the method handbook that we developed.
Or you don't need to give an explanation. You can just say, you know what, I don't like this kind of talk, and just leave it. It's up to you.
Some people claim that with digitalization we can automate the heavy work jobs, replacing physical strength with ICT competence. But again, this is a sector where men are heavily overrepresented, so we are just exchanging one male dominance with another.
You know what? Women are fit for the digitalized bioeconomies, just like any other progressive sector. Embracing gender equality is important for developing fields which are fast forwarding in terms of sustainability for all. I recommend that we embrace diversity.
So 3 additional voices on this topic. And having that said, I would like to welcome Annie Roos, who's been part of this project and who will talk us through some parts of the method handbook. So most welcome, Annie. Floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much, Maria. I hope you can see the presentation now. Good.
Looks good.
Great. Okay, so my job here is to give you an introduction to our teaching material that you can find on the web page. So the handbook provides you as a teacher with a practical handbook on how to focus on digitalization and gender equality within the Nordic bioeconomy in your specific teaching setting. And we provide you with 3 different packages to choose from depending on time and knowledge constraint, because as we all know, teaching is already packed. But depending on how much time you have, you can choose one of these. So these 3 packs, they varies depending on a number of factors, mostly how much time you can allocate for the students and how much time you can allocate for yourself. So the basic thing is to choose the package that fits you and your class the best. And in package 1, we provide 2 checklists of things to consider when trying to raise awareness of gender and digitalization issues in the bioeconomy. And one focus on things to consider when inviting guest lecturers, and the other of things to keep in mind when these subjects are raised in class, because sometimes it could be difficult to talk about these things. And in package 2, the students are getting hands-on focus of gender equality and digitalization in the Nordic bioeconomy. It still holds the checklists from package 1, but also a Mentimeter template to use for analyzing the class. We also provide literature and tips on how to do your own lecture around this, as well as inviting a guest lecture talking about this specific subject to your class. And also this package have examples of different exam questions that you could use, such as multiple answers, short answer questions, or even essay questions. And package 3, it consists of a full week's course, and it holds both package 1 and package 2, but also a seminar. In Sweden, we would call it a trestegsraket. So you can sort of choose what level you want to go into. But with this seminar comes instructions for the teachers and also to send out to the students, as well as a plan for how to time schedule of the seminar. We have tried to make it as easy for the teacher as possible. And this seminar can be run both online and in the class, depending on the pandemic and on the situation at hand. The seminars, they use both the podcasts that we have produced in this project, which we are also very proud of, and also the film clips that you have seen now. So through these 3 packages, we believe teachers can implement a focus on gender and digitalization in the Nordic bioeconomy based on their different ambition and constraints, because the material is also made in a way that it can easily be adjusted to the teacher's specific needs or the class specific needs. And with that, we wish you the best of luck when using this material, and you can always contact me if you want to discuss something around this, and I will also be in the, I can't remember the name, the coffee room, the virtual coffee room afterwards to discuss more.
Well, thank you so much, Annie. And how, if we want to get in contact with you, how do we do that? Where do we find you?
Yes, you can either choose this email. I'm at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, but you can also ask Jonas or Maria, and they will send my contact info along. And I'm also on LinkedIn, if that's interesting. Yeah.
Excellent. And of course, it's always possible to contact the SNS Secretariat, and you have a range of links posted in the chat function here now. So you can find more material. And of course, this is all open to anyone who's interested. So please go in and have a look, see if it's something for you or perhaps something for someone you know that could make use of this. So this has been sort of the final product, the packaging of the work that's been done within this project. And we are really grateful to everyone that's taken time to participate, both in these film clips, as you've seen. We also have a film clip with Paula Latumaki that you can find on the website. And also for the people engaging in the 2 podcasts that have been produced. So warm thank you to everyone that spent time and commitment making this such a good method handbook, I think. So now we presented to you the sort of initial parts of the project where we looked into what does the science actually say on this topic, and also provided you with some information on the method handbook that we put together. We would now like to just say a few words sort of on how do we continue this work? What are the next step? And I'm also glad to say that we have one of our main funding parties present here in the meeting. So I will soon welcome Jenny Pentler to say a few words. But first of all, we of course want to bring this forward. We want to take the next step and make the most of this work that has now already been done. And we're very happy to say that SNS and also NKJ, Nordic Agri Research, has decided to continue its efforts in this topic. And we now have a project that will sort of take on when this finish, which will be focusing on spreading the message. So basically marketing this methods handbook to universities and students throughout the Nordic region. So there will be funding set aside for making contact with relevant educations, relevant programs throughout the Nordic region, informing about the method handbook, and also, of course, engaging in this very important conversation on how can we integrate this into teaching, what are the important topics to bring forward, and how can we deal with sometimes very challenging questions. So that is one thing that will continue now during the spring. And Nordic Forest Research and Nordic Agri Research has also decided to involve in activities related to another perhaps target group, because the Bioequality project, as it has been running so far, has, as you've now understood, targeted students at university degrees or university programs. But we now also want to target younger people. So we're looking to engage with pupils, so perhaps people around the year of 13 to 16 years of age, in order to get into conversation before they actually make up their mind on what university degree do I want to choose. And we would like to combine this effort with the other project that SNS and NKJ are running, which is a Nordic testbed network. So by introducing these pupils, or some of the pupils, because we need to start off with a pilot to see if we're on the right track here. So we want to introduce some of pupils throughout the Nordic region to the very exciting environment of a testbed for the digitalized bioeconomy, in order to give them sort of an understanding of what could it mean to work in tomorrow's bioeconomy, and what do I need to study at university in order to be part of these sustainable solutions for tomorrow. And hopefully, I mean, opening up the eyes for different kind of educations, anything from programming to different engineering degrees, in order to understand that, well, this could also lead me into a very interesting work within the forestry or agricultural sector. So these are two different projects that will be kicking off during this spring and that we will work on during the year. And if you have any input on that or any questions regarding that, you're more than welcome to get in contact, either in the chat here in the meeting or in the Wonder, it's called Annie, where we will meet up in just a few minutes, or indeed afterwards, just get in contact through the SNS website. I would now like to invite Nordic Forest Research as the project owner of this to hear, Jonas, do you have any final thoughts, any reflections from listening in to this session here today?
Thank you. Yes, I think that we had a lot of good input today. It was very also good to hear the results again. So thank you very much to everyone participating and contributing today. Starting with Paula, I really like the very supportive reflection on these issues that she gave, and Matilda then continued with the need for change and role models, with the student, at least the former student experience or perspective. And Teppo also talked about what was mentioned by Paula. It's a matter of just, and it will create better results for us. And I think that you can also add the happiness of people in general. Pernilla at Gender also, I haven't really thought about it the way that you presented things, so it was really nice. And you also emphasized the fast development and the required flexibility and positivism, if you put it that way. And I thought that we should definitely continue with our value discussions that we have tried under this concept of kill middag, which can also, of course, be expanded to not only include men. And then we continue with different projects that we have had during the bioequality project, and the shift in the workforce demand and the window for change is now. I think that is something that we need to keep in mind and bring with us. Then Louise ended with the need for role models and networks, mentorships, and research and tools and methods, and we went into the method handbook. So we are definitely strengthened in our ambitions to continue to work with these issues. There will be a long-term commitment. There is a need for a long-term commitment and nudging and continuity. It's a slow process, at least within our sectors. Even if things are changing fast when it comes to the gender-related issues, to my experience so far, it's a slow process, and it needs that we're there and nudging all the time. It's not a one-time project and then we're finished and done. I guess that everyone here is aware of that. We now take the next steps for this long-term change, and I personally think that there is a request for this supportive handbook and materials, not only within the digitalized educations or within the bioeconomy. I've heard it from also our regular, if you put it that way, educations, that they're very interested in getting to see what this handbook is about and try to implement at least parts of it in the normal education. So then I think that this can reach much further than we perhaps thought from the beginning. With those words, I would like to again thank you everyone for joining. Thanks to all the collaborative partners that we've had. There's so many people involved in this that I will not start mentioning individuals. The finances, of course, Nick, not the least, and the ministerial, the Nordic Council of Ministers. Yes, Maria.
And thank you to Nordic Forest Research for having this long-term commitment that I think we can all agree is absolutely crucial. I think that I think that you very nicely highlighted, Jonas, all the different parts that we've been able to take part of here this Friday morning. And indeed, I can't say it enough. If you're interested and you want to get in touch, please do. And a good starting point is the website of SNS and NKJ. And you have a lot of different links in the chat that I would encourage you to save or check out. And we're most interested, I mean, since this work is continuing as well, we are most interested to continue the conversation. And I think, as Pernilla pointed out very, very nicely, it is in this conversation a lot of the things are happening. So let's continue the conversation. And we would like to do that here today in a virtual mingle room. So, I mean, since we can't meet physically, which had been very nice, we would like to invite you into a little salon where you can bring your own glass of water or a cup of coffee if you like. And I will guide you through how to do this. But it is, trust me, quite simple. I managed to do it. So I think most of you will be able. And if you have any issues, then we're here to help you. And I will start by sharing my slide here to tell you a little bit of how you can go about. So the place where we're heading for is called Wonder, and it's designed to sort of encourage digital mingling. And you, by clicking the link that should appear in the chat any second now, you will be directed in there. And we will then close this Zoom meeting and say thank you for this, and then welcome you into that Wonder space. So by clicking on the link, you can then enter into this digital format, and you will be creating a tiny avatar for yourself. And you can then join the room and join different people in discussions. So it's completely voluntarily, but we really hope to see you in there. And we will definitely, from the project side of you, be in there for at least 15 minutes to see if there are any questions or anything you would like to further discuss with regards of this topic. Not the least, if you have some suggestions, I mean, in relation to the coming initiatives from Nordic Forest Research and Nordic Agri Research, we will be more than happy to engage in conversation about that. But so basically, copy the link and then enter. You have a password. It's a mingle. You have then to accept the terms and enter your name, and then you are in this format, I hope. So by that, I would like to say thank you so much for joining us this morning. And thank you for providing with input and sharing some ideas in the chat for those of you who chose to do that. And I hope to see you in Wonder. So bye here and see you in Wonder. Thank you, everyone.